Welcome to Season 1 of the Mapleside Chats, your glimpse into the CEIBS MBA. This podcast presents you with the inside scoop on what really happens behind the scenes of China's top business school. Located in Shanghai on Hongfang Road, or Red Maple Road, the China-Europe International Business School aims to develop tomorrow's business leaders with a China depth, global breadth mindset. Sounds intriguing? Let's get started.
Welcome. In today's episode, we'll be discussing career switching through a CEIBS MBA. Why do people switch careers? How can an MBA help? And what challenges can you expect? Hi everyone, I'm Karen from MBA 2023, and I have with me today 3 wonderful guests. 2 of them are actually my current classmates, Dusan and Sabine, and one is a CEIBS alumnus, Simon from the MBA 2021 batch. All of them applied for a CEIBS MBA looking to make a career switch, and so I'm very excited to have them all here today for a chat about their unique experiences. Can we start by having each of you just introduce yourself very quickly? What were you doing before the MBA? Maybe let's start with Simon, and you can also share a bit about what you are currently doing since you've graduated from the MBA.
I was born and raised in Germany to Chinese parents. So they went to Germany in the 80s, and they always kept an eye on making sure that I was raised in both cultures and also bilingually. Before going to university, I realized I'm only good at stuff that I feel intrinsic motivation or passion for. So undergrads, my parents would probably, push me to study law or economics or whatever, right? I basically said no. I studied German literature. So I'm a literature major. And then the next thing I was interested in was basically learning more about my heritage, my roots. So I transitioned into modern China studies. So learning about what are the socioeconomic, the philosophical, cultural background of the people here. I did that for 2 years. And this helped me land a job with a German government agency. So just to give you a brief background, the German government, they outsource all their international cooperation projects. I worked for this company called GIZ in Beijing for 3 years. My job was to align the interests of the German industry, specifically the automotive industry, with the Chinese government's interests with regards to trade. So trying to figure out the common ground, organize joint cooperation projects, writing reports and so on. So I started becoming interested in businesses because I realized in the end, in this, let's say, capitalist world we live in, businesses are the only ones that can really have an impact on the world and on the society. I transitioned into a German business in China. But with my background, it's quite hard. I was in a mid-management level, but talking to businesses, they would always put me just at entry level. So it was a bit of a frustrating time. So I thought the CEIBS will basically help me. Luckily, I was accepted to the 21 batch. I think it's fair to say that the MBA definitely helped me to transition. In the end, I was lucky enough to land a job with a German family office that is looking for early stage investment opportunities in China.
Amazing. Congratulations on the career switch. Now, Dusan?
Originally, I'm from Croatia, and I have been in China since 2015. Actually, when I was very young, I wanted to go and live abroad. I didn't want to stay in Croatia. I always wanted to live in different countries. So I'm a veterinarian by education. I have been working for a short time in Croatia as a veterinarian, and then I moved to China. I was working for the internet chain of hospitals. The company was actually having hospitals all over Asia. And this was one of the reasons I decided to come, because actually it gave me the opportunity to travel and actually to work in different places around China. After that, my company got acquired. And then I changed my position from clinician to general management, where I took over the international department of the new company.
Wow. So you're actually also a career switcher. That's great. Now let's finish with Sabine. Can you tell us a bit more about you?
I started my career as a classical pianist, actually. So I went to conservatory in Zurich and was an aspiring professional musician. I quickly realized that music is a beautiful hobby but they wouldn't fulfill me as a lifelong career. So I decided to go to law school in Zurich and then did a postgraduate degree in Hong Kong University. My first roles was with the top law firm in Switzerland. After I came back from my LLM in Hong Kong University, I realized that I need to get back to Asia. Pre-MBA, I was in the Shanghai office of one of the largest Swiss law firms, which is the only big one that actually has a physical presence here, mainly doing cross-border transactions with a focus on investment transactions from startup financing rounds to private equity to M&A.
That is actually a really amazing story. So you went from music to law. I just have a quick follow-up question. Who's your favorite classical musician, if you have to choose one?
This would be Ravel, a French composer in the early 1900s who is close to Debussy. So it's an impressionist style. One of the greatest memories from my musical career was when I had already started law school, but my previous teacher asked me whether I would be willing to perform the Ravel concerto for piano and orchestra. That was the highlight of what I've always dreamed to do as a musician, and the dream came true just when I was leaving music. So it was kind of a way for me to find closure.
That's a really lovely story. So I'm going to ask Dusan the same question. Dusan, who's your favorite classical musician?
My favorite musician is Sabine.
I'm flattered.
Okay, so serious question. So Dusan, Sabine, you've both actually already undergone some kind of career transition, right? So Sabine, you went from music to law, and then Dusan, you went from medicine to general management. So why did you feel that you had to do an MBA to help you with the next career switch?
Okay, let me start first. For me, the plan after the MBA is to focus 100% on entrepreneurship. My educational background is in veterinary medicine, so I don't have very strong financial knowledge. Even from very early age, I was showing certain characteristics that were very, very entrepreneurial. So I would be buying things for cheaper, selling them for more expensive. Then I got a chance to actually work a little bit with real estate, where I would be buying properties, renovating them, reselling them. So there were always signs that I would like to do something on my own. CEIBS is a very academic school. One of the reasons I'm here is because of that. And also, hopefully, to find another co-founder for my next projects. One of my strong interests is in life science. CEIBS is very well to have strong healthcare network. We have a lot of CEOs, COOs, and very highly positioned people who are actually running the Chinese healthcare industry. So considering all that, it was very logical for me.
Yeah, for me, there are several reasons why MBA and especially why CEIBS. I was doing a good job as a lawyer, but I realized that even if I would progress within the legal industry, becoming partner eventually, I would still be doing the same kind of work up until I retire. So for me, it was really a reflection of where do I want to be 10 or 20 years down the line. I was looking at my seniors, and the path of getting there was not appealing to me in a sense that I knew I would only specialize on a technical level, but I saw very limited growth opportunities for me as a person to make the next career transition in the long term. I felt that having a legal background didn't really equip me well to go out into the business world. People would basically tell you, oh yeah, you're more than welcome to work in a corporate legal department, but we don't really trust that you can do anything other than revising contracts. So for me, that was the second reason of gaining accreditation from a top MBA school to acquire business knowledge, same as Dusan said, on the academic side, to deep dive into certain topics that I never had a chance to go into as a lawyer.
I see. And actually, how did all of you hear about CEIBS? When you were thinking about doing an MBA, did you also consider other business schools? So maybe we'll start with Simon.
When I was looking at business schools, I had this imposter syndrome. I thought, okay, I have no business background. I know a little bit about what's going on with German businesses in China. That's basically it. I had a mentor in Beijing. And he said, yeah, how it seems, because it's a very international school. He thought my profile would fit in. When I looked at business school rankings, I always thought CEIBS up there, right? And I thought, okay, that's out of my punching range. I was really a bit intimidated, to be honest. But then what happened was very strange things. Local schools, their requirement, I kept my Chinese citizenship. So in that case, I need to go through a Chinese testing system, and I can't do that. So basically, the only option left for me was CEIBS. You can just go in with the GMAT, right?
For me, there were different channels. So the first channel for me was the Swiss Chinese Chamber of Commerce, where I've been a member of the board since 2019. CEIBS was a corporate member having the Zurich and China campus. Back in March last year, I started to think about what I would do next year when my 3-year assignment to China would come to an end. I've moved in with my partner here in Shanghai, and going back was really not an option. I was playing around different ideas in my head. I spoke to different people, mentors, family, partner. The MBA topic was kind of in the back of my head for a long time, but always I said, okay, first do your 4 or 5 years in your firm, and then maybe you take a step back and go for further education, and then you become partner. That was my initial game plan. But then COVID came, and I realized I need to take a decision now. Opportunity knocked on my door when I met Yuan, the dean of CEIBS, at an event in May. He mentioned that the last application round was still running and actively put me in touch with the admissions office. So that was kind of the official channel. But in the process of researching, I reached out to alumni of the school and had informal chats to learn about their feedback of the program. So I had different channels before going for the application.
Actually, what keeps you both in China? A lot of foreigners have left China during the pandemic. So I'm just wondering, why do both of you want to stay here?
For me, the potential opportunities that China brings. I think by now everybody's aware that China is developing very fast, and there will be even more opportunities in the future. Personally, I hope I will be able to act as a bridge between the West and the East, and hopefully I will also find certain entrepreneurial opportunities for myself.
Yeah, for me, ultimately, something similar like Dusan just mentioned, being a bridge between China and other parts of the world. I do believe there is still a lack of professionals who can really credibly claim they know enough about China to be a useful source. You cannot come here for a year and leave. I mean, you can, but then you will basically stay in your expat bubble and you've had no interaction whatsoever with the real China. Once you've invested in China, meaning learning the language, traveling within China, working in a completely local environment, you spend long hours in a tiny office with your Chinese colleagues, really getting a feel of how they think, how they interact with each other, how do they eat together, what gossip do they talk about. Once you've made that investment, leaving after 2 or 3 years is also not ideal because you will basically lose your connections. We're probably at a point where if you now keep investing a little bit more into understanding the environment, I think there will be even more opportunities for us going forward, whether we will stay in China or whether we do something outside of China.
Right. And so after you had decided that you were going to do a CEIBS MBA, did any of you face any objections or any challenges or, difficulties during that process?
Yeah, maybe I can start with that. I did face a number of challenges when I first started to play around with the idea of stepping out of the legal profession. I decided to go through this application process without telling my boss at the time, because I sensed that there may be difficulties actually communicating what I wanted to do. And also because the way the firm hired me was they created that position in Shanghai specifically for me with the intention of sending me here for 3 years, coming back to Switzerland, knowing how to collaborate with the Chinese team. So they made kind of an upfront investment. I wasn't given any gifts. I actually took a massive pay cut to come here. Still, the firm had long-term plans with me. So I felt I needed to let go of that expectation first for myself, allowing me to think, okay, I'm actually allowed. I'm not married to this company and also not married to my boss. But still, this was for me the biggest challenge, doing the whole application process, having this feeling of guilt, like I'm leaving my company and they've gone the extra mile for me. When I actually got admitted to CEIBS, I had this difficult conversation with my boss. Basically, my boss was telling me I was making the biggest mistake of my life, saying that, as a lawyer, the only thing you can be good at is being a partner in a law firm. But if you don't know the business anywhere else, I wouldn't be so confident that you can get where you want to get. That was something that, a person that I had confided in and who also saw me working the most closely, who also said you could be potentially the managing partner of this firm in the future. So he placed a lot of trust in me. And this person that I trusted told me in the face, you haven't done your due diligence.
You're wrong, basically.
You're wrong. Yeah. You're wrong. So that was the biggest challenge. Let me just clarify. So I had two bosses. One was back in Switzerland and one was in China. And the Chinese boss was absolutely fantastic. I actually just had a chat with him yesterday. Also, the brand of CEIBS is probably even more well known. He also knew about the scholarship and what it means to be admitted. So he was absolutely fantastic in saying, if I would be your age at that time, I would do exactly the same. And how can we make sure that we collaborate? And since I left the firm, I've referred at least 3 or 4 clients. I think the second challenge that I faced was knowing that staying in China in the current circumstances also means you don't get to see your family for the duration of the MBA, most likely. And then also having this conversation with my parents and saying, this is what is best for me. And this means that your daughter will not be home for Christmas next time either. So these were the 2 challenges that I faced when I decided to come to CEIBS.
For myself, luckily, I didn't have any big challenges or any issues with joining CEIBS. For me, it was a very clear decision. I knew what I wanted. I was definitely leaving a very good job with a very good company, but I'm also aware that I am opening doors for some good things in the future. And luckily, my company was also very supportive, and my boss, who I'm still in touch today, they were all super supportive.
So, Dusan and Sabine, we've just finished our first term at CEIBS, and for better or worse, we've gotten some of our grades back. I would just like to turn the tables and give you guys a chance to evaluate CEIBS. How would you grade CEIBS in terms of helping you achieve your career switching goals?
I do think I would score them in the A category. CEIBS is a place where you get out of it what you put in. And they said that in the first week, the way the program is structured is logical in a way that term 1 and term 2, they want you to focus on the core stuff. So anything from basics in accounting, basics in micro and macroeconomics, organizational behavior, etc., to really equip you to move on in this MBA journey. But then the other side, in terms of careers, they offer a lot of resources that you have access to. One of the resources which for me personally was most useful is campus talks or workshops by external professionals. On the career switch side, I think I've progressed already so much in a way that I'm more aware of where are my strengths or where do I maybe need to adjust my expectations in terms of career switch. And then the third pillar of resources is really the Career Development Center. I do think they provide an environment where the barrier of accessing resources is very low and people are generally really committed to making you succeed, because if they don't help you succeed, they won't succeed. So it's a two-way street, and they're honestly motivated to make sure that you get the best out of it, provided you play by the rules and you also put in the work.
I think Sabine really summarized everything fantastically. There's really very, very little for me to add. What I can add, I'm not going to give A as Sabine. I will give A minus. I actually agree with Sabine with everything that she said. The A minus from my side is because the workload is so high that you actually don't have time for anything else, the networking side. So at least this is for the first couple of months. We really have little time to do anything outside of the classroom. And I think it's very important for whoever is listening this and is considering CEIBS. The workload is really, really high. We do have to study a lot, work a lot, and I think everybody should prepare for that. This is also a very strong side of the CEIBS. Something that I find very useful is the case method way that they are teaching us here. Basically, how it works. We receive the materials, the text about the company, and then we have to draw conclusions. And usually after the reading, we have a discussion. During the class, professor lets us lead the conversation where we think that we should go. But at the end, she tells us, okay, maybe you should have done this or you should have done that. So for example, for me, the most interesting case was a marketing case company called Vans. So that they are most famous for the shoes. The very interesting concept was about a hostile brand. So which means that you start as a smaller company and you have a very hardcore fans and customers. And then when you try to grow your company, you need to be very, very careful because you're at risk of having those first original customers go. I see that as a very, very useful thing that can be implemented in many industries. So I was very, very happy to have the case like this. So I was joking and saying A-, but yeah, definitely it's a deserved A.
Actually liked reading those cases. Maybe it was also my literature background. It was fun to analyze what was going on. I know that a lot of students struggle with that. They don't like to read those cases, but for me, it was cool. Honestly, the first time I saw a balance sheet was at CEIBS, right? The first time I even learned anything about marketing or entrepreneurship, all these frameworks, all these practical cases and so on. It's the first time I was really learning about these things. So it was amazing experience. I was trying to get as much knowledge as I could. I want to say this. The ones that I struggled with the most, they were probably the ones where I could learn the most and I learned the most. As you might imagine, the courses that I felt most comfortable in was more about soft skills, leadership, behavioral economics. And I have to say, they also encouraged me to stay on that path because I realized actually with my prior experience, I bring a very unique type of skill set that is very important and sought after in business, especially in higher management. You have a lot of managers that are good at crunching numbers and at their domain expertise, but what's really rare, people who are good at that, but then are also good at leading people, basically managing people and also making their lives less miserable, as one of our professors would say, because this is what you have to do.
For me, a favorite class I will treasure for a long time is the Everest simulation that we did in organizational behavior. So CEIBS makes you work a lot in groups. And this was, for me, one of the biggest challenges in term one, in terms of personal growth. How do you interact with others with completely different backgrounds? This Everest simulation, we had this experience of sitting together in a team, having a computer-based challenge of climbing Mount Everest in a team of 5 or 6 in a very limited time frame, and we had to make decisions on the go. Basically, the challenge was not to get rescued off the mountain. What happened to our team was we were all really excited to work together. Everything was super smooth. And at the end, we all died. We passed all the tests along the way, and then we made one mistake, not to calculate the oxygen correctly. All of us had to be rescued off the mountain. And that was really how can this happen? Because we were going along so well. There was trust, there was information sharing. And then at some point, someone made the wrong decision based on something that someone else said. I think this was kind of a culmination of this organizational behavior subject, which was not really tangible in many aspects, but this was kind of a real life situation where you start to think, okay, why did this team work together so nicely, or what went wrong along the process?
If I may add, to make you feel better, my teammate in the same game, so actually he was dead for 30 minutes before figuring out that he was dead. So I think you guys did well.
If I may add, my group actually made it alive through the whole simulation. So just FYI.
Right.
Big shots, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Simon, back to you. You've actually finished the MBA program. Can you think of the top 1 or 2 things that you did during CEIBS that really helped you in your career switch?
Yeah, so the first thing is probably keep an open mind, right? So I think what CEIBS wants to hear in the application letters is that you have a very clear idea what you do after the MBA and why the MBA would help you to do that. For me, coming into business school, it was very important to keep an open mind and to explore all kinds of different opportunities and areas. In the beginning, I actually thought that the best next step would be going to management consulting. It kind of makes logical sense, right? I applied for a few boutique consultancies because I felt that that's the best way to learn, because you basically work directly with their partners. 3 internships with boutique consultancies, all different areas. From the beginning, I knew I had to do that. I never knew anything about VC really before, because I always assumed that you need a financial background. So keeping an open mind was the number one thing to realize, wait, this space is first of all interesting. And secondly, actually with my skill set and with my background, I fit in there quite well. If I kept a very narrow mind and said, okay, I want to have a job in marketing, I don't think that's the right way to approach MBA. Secondly, this probably goes without saying, but one big thing about the MBA is the network part, right? I'm talking about the local alumni network, the EMBA, the Gemba network especially. Find a way in. This is something that I realized now is actually the most valuable thing probably. And just to give you an example, I didn't plan that, but that was the football league. So I played football and joined one of the teams. And when I first was approached by that family office, I thought, okay, I don't know anything about VC, right? So who do I talk to? And I realized the goalkeeper in my team is the managing partner of Kleiner Perkins. So basically one of the biggest. So I said, okay, do you have time for coffee? And of course he had, because I'm his teammate every weekend. He carved out 2 hours in his schedule and he explained the whole VC world in China from business view in very great detail. And still now, sometimes when I want an outside perspective, I just call him up and ask him about it. Not everybody plays football, I understand that, but there are other things to do, other clubs and opportunities.
I see. That's actually a great coincidence. Okay, so back to Dusan and Sabine. Let's talk a bit more about our classmates, right? So Dusan, you mentioned that you were looking for a co-founder for your company. Have you found anyone so far?
So there are definitely some fantastic people. Sabine is one of them. Karen, I'm sorry, you're
Plus one for
I'm kidding. So definitely there are amazing people in the school. The variety and the backgrounds is really fantastic. Even though we are in China, we actually have a lot of international people. Some of them have been born in China, then moved outside, then came back.
Yeah, the diversity is really impressive. What I do feel is that sometimes it's hard to bring out that diversity with everything that is going on. Now that we're in term 2, what I really appreciate is as we are going into a bit more sophisticated classes, for instance, entrepreneurial management or corporate governance or strategy, people start to share experiences from their previous work. And then you're like, oh, I didn't know that this person had this role at this company or that this company had these problems. So for instance, we have one excellent lady, she was with IKEA before. And then when we had the strategy class, she was able to share from the inside what was going on at IKEA. I feel that the longer we go on, the more you start to appreciate or to see people with a completely different lens.
I also wanted to ask, what's the most fun thing you've done at CEIBS so far?
So one of the fun things that happened was when we had this Thanksgiving dinner, and we have actually quite a number of people who are musically talented in our batch. So when the occasion arose, our accounting professor started to sing O Sole Mio. And someone played the guitar at Hawk, and then Ryan and I played the piano. So we got to jam on the spot. It was completely random, and everyone was having a fantastic evening. And it was obviously after a round of red wine or whatever we had. These are the kind of moments that you won't forget.
I was there, so I'm going to use the same. So, okay, I can say that there's been many fun things at school. But for me personally, because I really love football, there is a lot of chance to play. There are a lot of football teams in CEIBS. So if somebody loves playing football, I think there will be a lot of chance to join.
Amazing. And what position do you play?
I play everything.
An all-rounder.
Does any of you have advice to those who are thinking about career switching and maybe thinking about coming to CEIBS, but still aren't very sure?
I can start. I think whoever is worried that maybe those are serious people who are scary or are going to look down on them, definitely no. Like everybody is super nice, super friendly. So actually all of us here are student ambassadors. So we are volunteers who hope to help the next generation of the potential students to make better decisions and hopefully to join CEIBS. If you think that some of the student ambassadors can help, reach out and don't overthink. Everybody will go really above and beyond to help you and to give you the information to figure out with you if CEIBS is a good solution, if it's a good fit for you,
Actually, if you want to get to know how to get in touch with Dusan, go on the website and you'll find at least the email address.
Great tip for any listeners. Okay, what about those people who are starting to prepare their applications?
So I would tell them start on time, if you can, of course. Everybody's in a different situation, but if you can, try to organize things a little bit ahead of the time. Prepare well for the exams that you need to do before you apply for the school. Also, think who you will ask for the recommendation letters. So either being your bosses or your previous network. Of course, talk to family. See if they will be able to support you, because you do need to have support, because it is a relatively long program and you will be away for a significant amount of the time.
I would add, give yourself the time to do some soul searching while you are at CEIBS. So doing a career switch is a process, and deciding to come to CEIBS to do an MBA for me is like already maybe the second step after you may somehow stuck in your current career and you're figuring out the options. And then what I would suggest to people thinking about this is that when you come to CEIBS, ideally you have some sort of idea what you want to do, but it's also a good environment to observe, explore different things. And I've heard many alumni saying that I've switched my plan while I was at CEIBS. So it's not something that you come in, you sell them a story, what you want to do, and then you're stuck with that story. So have an idea of what you want to do will help, but also don't be too stuck on what you absolutely have to do, so that you are able to process the things that are thrown at you, because there is actually too much information that is thrown at you during your time at CEIBS. So if you want to do a career switch, be patient with yourself, explore the soul searching part through workshops, through your friends, through family, and then go for it.
So have you found any new industries or sectors that you are interested in?
So long term, I think something related to tech would be interesting for me to develop in, but it can be anything from new energy related tech to high-tech materials to more the cloud space. I do think my long-term goal is to develop into venture capital. And I think there are different ways, and sometimes you just need to be open to the opportunity that knocks on your door. And along the way, you acquire different industry knowledge. I see myself at a stage where for the next 10 years, I will be accumulating experiences, ideally in different industries, especially if we think that we may not be here in China in 10 years. So you also want to think about in which industries can you acquire skills that are transferable.
Dusan, I know you are really into the healthcare and life sciences industry, but are you also keeping an eye out on other interesting opportunities?
Of course. I think that every person, especially young person, has to be open-minded and flexible. If you want to be entrepreneur, you have to be flexible, and the opportunities are not always where your interests are. So you do have to occasionally change your direction. So definitely also flexible. Definitely first focus is the healthcare, biotechnology, because I believe that those are actually the sectors that will change the world, that can help the people around the world. And of course, there are a lot of opportunities in those sectors. But in the future, who knows? I'm sure there's going to be other interests.
Amazing. Okay, so the last question. I think this is something that perhaps all of our listeners are wondering, at least at the back of their minds. So, do you have to know Chinese or, speak Mandarin to do a CEIBS MBA? I think that's the question that many people would want to ask.
Okay, I want to be completely honest here. The general trend in China is localization. The main reason probably is that the local Chinese talent group is becoming larger and more capable. So you will find a lot of highly educated Chinese that studied abroad, maybe, so had enjoyed the best education in the world, speak completely fluent English and Chinese for sure. And basically now, instead of working abroad, what they would have done maybe 10, 20 years ago, they now come back. It will become more and more difficult for expats to land jobs in China. This is a fact. There's no way to ignore that fact. But the pandemic, of course, also played an important role here. But this is the harsh reality. So as a foreign passport holder, you will need to have a very unique skill set that cannot be found on the Chinese market. It's not impossible, but if you don't make an attempt to learn the language and understand the local culture, you won't be hired anymore. those times are over. Nowadays, the people I know that are successful in China, they are deeply rooted into the society. They speak the language. They're interested in China and into absorbing the culture. So to answer your question, yes, it is important. I know it's hard, but at least try. It's not that hard. People sometimes think it's like rocket science, right? Most of the business communication happens in English anyways, right? So for me, it's more about the signal, right? The signal that you're sending. It's to show your willingness to integrate into the society, the culture, okay, so if you're a foreigner, you will always have a foreign face. And unfortunately, this means in China, you will always face obstacles. It is just the truth or the reality. But you can try to make people more sympathetic to you, right? And this is a very important thing when you want to do business in China, when you have a career in China. And one way to do it is by showing your willingness to learn the language. And this, I think, is more important than the practical usage of the language. You probably will never manage a team in Chinese.
I would add, you don't need to be fluent. So we have international colleagues who are in China for the first time, who just started to learn Chinese as a part of the curriculum, because if you don't speak any Chinese, CEIBS requires you to acquire at least HSK 3 before you graduate. So if you can invest time in doing or learning Chinese before you come, it will save you a lot of time. So you don't need it, but it's a big plus because still 60% of our is Chinese. And out of the 40% internationals, there are still many who have somehow a China-related background. So definitely in the group work on campus, if you can participate in the discussions or in the conversation in Chinese, you will arrive much faster.
Yeah, I would agree. So definitely you don't have to have the skills of Chinese language, but it is super, super helpful. And you will make friends much easier. But of course, also, if you're planning to stay in China in the future, it is a very, very useful thing to have. So for whoever is considering to having any connections with China or coming to CEIBS, definitely the skills of Chinese are very important.
I see. That's definitely very important to know. So Dusan, Sabine, you've both been in China for quite some time, right? And you've both been learning Chinese. So we're just going to end the podcast with an impromptu Chinese quiz, okay? What's the last thing that someone said to you in Chinese?
你好厉害呀.
Oh, what's the context? Oh, wait, Dusan, let me check. Did you understand that?
You're very good.
That's close enough.
Yeah.
It was actually an interesting interaction in a Shanghai Didi. So I was interacting with this taxi driver in Chinese and he was very curious. And at some point they usually comment on your Chinese skills. So that was a really nice interaction.
Okay, Dusan, your turn.
For me, okay, the last thing that I heard that somebody told me in Chinese was, 你是中文专家?
So Chinese expert.
Yes.
Great.
And who said it? Was it a girl?
It was myself.
Right, should have expected that. Well, we've reached the end of our time today. Thank you so much, Sabine, Simon, and Dusan. It was fantastic chatting with all of you about career switching on today's episode of Mapleside Chats, a glimpse into the CEIBS MBA. Have a great day and goodbye.
We hope you've enjoyed this glimpse into MBA life at CEIBS. If you have any questions or comments about this episode or the podcast in general, please feel free to reach out. Our email's in the podcast description. Stay tuned for our next episode.